Good afternoon. I greet all who joined us in Media Center of Ukraine, Ukrinform. We continue our work. Olga Tomano is with you for 9th year of war and 27th day of full-scale invasion of Russian aggression on our land. And I want to thank you all who work and who show the truth about this war. And today we'll speak about the situation in the sphere of defense and security, and our first speaker, Oleksandr, the Speaker of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine. Please tell us what happened this week in the ministry. Dear friends, greet you all. Traditional joint weekly briefing today with expensive Ms. Mahler. I will speak on the block of the defense and then representative of the general staff, and then other bonus of defense of Ukraine. 30th of June is 127th day of heroic resistance of Ukrainian nation in great war for freedom. Today, that's first half of 2022, the year when Russia started against Ukraine unjustified, unprovoked, full-scale war. War that is target of destroying Ukrainian nation and liquidation of Ukraine as a country. Therefore, the goal of our work is our fight for independence from Russian Empire. Our goal is to keep the topic of our fight for freedom on the agenda of Ukraine and Western world, and to convey to the international community the truth about the enemy, about the true targets of the enemy, about the intentions of enemy and plans for Europe. For Ukraine, the priority is help from our Western partners. Therefore, we will work in this direction, reaching efficient results in fighting Russian occupiers. Our successes on the front line and international arena, and also joining in the coalition with the world, the Putin occupants perceive that very sensitive and cannot resist and become unpredictable barbarians. The evidence is that there are recent rocket strikes, missile strikes on Kremenchuk, Kyiv, and Kharkiv. We call that missile terror, despair, and we emphasize that all the crimes of Russia against Ukraine will be punished. The least what Russian military war criminals deserve is jail. We define all the persons of occupants that conduct terror on Ukrainian land. Making them responsible is one of the important mission of ours. Today, Ministry of Defense and other law enforcement bodies work 24/7 to ensure also armed forces provide for armed forces all the necessary means to be efficient in combat. That's contemporary weapons, military equipment, medicine, feeding, also personal protection gear, and other necessary items that is necessary for our courageous defenders. And higher political and military management of the country does everything possible to keep and to defend the most valuable that we have in the country, people, and also use all means that in our defenders that are prisoners of war in Russia, that they return to their homes as soon as possible, alive and not damaged. Yesterday there was the biggest exchange of prisoners of war since this start of full-scale invasion. 144 defenders of Ukraine returned home, and Ukraine is thankful to all adjacent agencies and people who made that possible. Today, the security situation around Ukraine stays complicated and intense. The main strategic military and political and military economical goals of Kremlin to our country are not changed. According to information intelligence of the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine, right now the enemy focused on getting control over Donetsk and Lugansk regions, most complicated situation in Kharkiv, Lysychansk, and Bakhmut directions. As our intelligence informs, Kremlin keeps keeping on the Belarusian territory missile and anti-aircraft missile detachments, and also airplanes of tactic aviation that are involved for strikes on civil objects in territory of Ukraine, to destroy the most important military and civil objects, and to get strategic reserves from Ukraine, and to destroy the plans of supplies of military aid from foreign partners. Russia continues use of high-precision weapons for land, air, and sea strikes. Over the last 3 days, the enemy increased intensity of missile strikes in territory of Ukraine to replenish the losses in equipment they take from storages necessary samples of weapons and military equipment. As our intelligence found out, starting with April this year, on all the territory of Russia, including furthest regions such as Kaliningrad and Sakhalin, they can have means to remove from storage, renewal, and preparing for delivery and transportation to region of operative location, and further use of weapons and equipment. At the same time, social economy situation on temporary occupied territory of Ukraine continues exacerbation. Our intelligence informs that in Mariupol, also in the majority of captured Ukrainian territories that are captured by Russian occupiers, practically all the reserves of foodstuffs and first necessity items are exhausted, and there are no supplies from Russia. Next to the start of June this year mark increase of prices for the main groups of goods and decrease of volumes of issuing so-called humanitarian aid to population by occupants. At the same time, Russia activates means to Russify occupied territories. Special attention is paid to removing from turnover the Ukrainian hryvnia and increase of ruble mass, and also for pushing local population Russian practice of activity in all sphere of activity, of life. In more detail about the situation at combat area, you will hear from representative of General Staff, and I will continue information regarding activity on Ministry of Defense. MOD of Ukraine continues successfully fight for interests of the state in the courts, in particular regarding renewal of rights of military institution for land plots that were illegally removed from its authority the previous year. One more victory is renewal of judicial service for rights of land or total territory over 958 hectares of land. The court of Odessa region fulfilled the claim of Ministry of Defense regarding illegally moved from its property Tarutinska lot of 203 hectares, and also a decision of court of Kiev of returning land of 735 hectares in Rivne region. After those court decisions become enforced, the MOD will practically return those plots to the sphere of management. One more important task of protecting legal interests of Ministry of Defense is taking funds from improper fulfillment of obligations of business operators to MOD. On 28th and 29th of June this year, Central and Northern Appeal courts made 4 court decisions for the benefit of MOD that took fines for the amount of 4 million hryvnia from business operators for improper fulfillment of agreements. They become enforced those, and they will be subject to implement as according to law. And traditionally, we inform the community about dynamics of the provision for armed forces. Most important achievement is sustainable arithmetical supplies that allow forming the resistance stock. As even though the enemy tries to break that logistic process. In particular, from the period from the 23rd of 29th of June to provide for detachments of Ukrainian military armed forces, we received 22,000 of armed forces, over 21,000 of pairs of shoes, 12,000 of Kevlar helmets, 30,000 of uniforms. Also soon we expect 17,000 of armed bulletproof vests and 7,000 of helmets. Those are means of personal armor that are on the way to the logistics or are in the process of accounts, so they will appear in the balance of Ukrainian military in the closest date. And overall, if we summarize the supplies for June, particularly those who will be in account within today, the MOD transferred to armed forces over 100,000 bulletproof vests. I would say that for yesterday night, the logistic storages, there were means for 6th Brigade of armor. And during June, there is preparation for a winter season, and the speed is increasing. Within last week, for armed forces, we supplied 21,000 of units of winter jackets. Ministry of Defense contracted big amount for army. Some Ukrainian producers are loaded with orders until the end of the year, and the emphasis made on providing and organizing the delivery. And last, we traditionally speaking about providing funds and finance for our defenders, and here the situation is also sustainable. I remind you that in June, for May, the Ministry of Defense finance payments of salaries to finance of service personnel over 60 billion of hryvnia, including almost 30 billion hryvnia, so-called combat money. Overall, in 4 months, for financing was 171 billion hryvnia. According to information, the Treasury of Ukraine finalized the transfers of payment from military units to service personnel. And I want to emphasize that we monitor the situation, and our specialists from Department of Finance of MOD assist financial service of military units and the service personnel. I remind you that payments of monthly payments for June will be in the first day of June, and additional in the second 10 days of July. That's all for MOD. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you. I'll give the floor to the next speaker, Brigadier General Oleksiy Hromov. Mr. Oleksiy, tell us what's happening on the front line right now. Good day. I want to tell you that resisting the fire of artillery and aviation, the occupants left Zmyny Island. We're all happy that, yes, it's good. But, however, the enemy tries to gain full control over the territory of Lugansk and Donetsk regions. They try to keep the parts of Kherson and Zaporizhia regions and try to make beneficial conditions to renew the offensive in Kharkiv and Mykolaiv regions. They continue constraining forces and combating in the east of our country. Currently, in Volynsk, Zhytomyr, and Kiev direction, the situation over a week was controlled. However, there were no sign of creating the offensive groups of the enemy. No active actions of the enemy on these directions. Their activity was recon, demonstrational activity across the state border of Ukraine. However, I want to emphasize that Belarusian authorities continue assisting Russia into conducting war against Ukraine. According to our data last week, the enemy with two rail echelons, delivered a next batch of ammo for military of Russia. That ammo will be used against our defenders. In Chernihiv, Konotop, and Sumy directions, the activity of the enemy were characterized with aviation strikes, with mortar artillery shelling of our positions, reconnaissance with the UAVs with violation of state border of Ukraine to demonstrate presence and bind the actions and prevent the redislocation of our troops. The enemy continues to holding near border in Bryansk and Kursk regions up to 3 battalion tactical groups. In Kharkiv direction, the enemy conducts active defense, preventing tries to prevent Ukrainian forces to move to state border, and makes reconnaissance with fight to find weak spots of our defense. In Slovak direction, they consider assault to improve the tactical position, to create conditions to renew the offensive in direction of Izum, Barvinkova, and also Izum, Slavyansk. In Lysychansk direction, in combat, they managed to get control over Severodonetsk, Voronezh, and Borivske. Our detachments pulled back and first and right bank of the Donetsk River. The enemy had severe losses, and our armed forces decreased their offensive capabilities and prevented them from moving the means to the other directions. The enemy tries to get full control in the region of Lysychansk. In the last days, there is combat near Lysychansk oil processing plant. Our defenders resistance, but regardless of the high losses in personnel and equipment, the enemy tries to get full control of that region. In Bakhmut direction, making upper hand in means artillery, the enemy got control over Kamyshyvacha, Kirsk, and Zolote. The highest companies there as well. Trying to bind our detachments, the enemy continues offensive and assault on Solidar in Klinove and Lugansk electric station. The enemy had no success in those directions. In Kramatorsk, Avdiivka, Novopavlovka, and Zaporizhzhia directions, enemy makes systematic fire impact with use of all range of weapons to bind the defense forwards and preventing to moving them to other directions. Kryvyi Mykolaiv direction. Enemy did not conduct any active measures, made fire impact on our positions, where the artillery made aviation strikes across all the contact line. Bessarabsky direction. There were no signs of offensive groups of enemy. Detachments of the enemy conduct service in the forest regime. In equatorias of Azov and Black Sea, there are military ships and submarines of the enemy that, together with aviations and missile, they are involved with missile strikes in the depth of our country. Conducting those strikes was increased by enemy lately, also from Belarus. Thus, from 13th to the 29th, they used 202 times the missile weapons. That's 120 strikes more than average in June. They hit the critical objects, critical infrastructure objects, transport networks, and also they strike on civilian objects and civilian populations in Ukraine. They use over 50% of missiles from Soviet stocks that don't have enough precisions. And the result, they strike on residential areas in Kiev, Mykolaiv, private houses in Kiev-Odessa region, Ochakov, Krasnopilya, Kurakhove, 2 schools in Mykolaiv, also civil infrastructure objects. And we have to speak about the mall, Amstor in Kremenchuk, that strike on Kremenchuk. And because of those missile strikes, they struck 68 times on civil infrastructure. The airplanes of Tu-23 we detect them in advance, the times of missile go just within a few minutes to the object. So there's just very little time to to go to the shelter. So please do not neglect the airstrikes, even though you think the missile goes not going your direction. The air defense of Ukraine uses maximum means to destroy attempts of the enemy that came back from air. But we're not. Our means are not calculated to fight against such rockets. But with our will, with our skill, part of destroyed missiles sometimes amounts 50-60% at launch. For example, when the 28th of June they used wing missiles on Dnipro, our anti-aircraft destroyed four out of 6 missiles. Now the groups of defense can use defense in defined regions. In Volyn, Zhytomyr, Sumy, and Kiev region, they cover the state border of Ukraine. In Kharkiv, Lugansk, and Donetsk region, where there is much intense combat, our detachments conduct defense and contain the defense, deter the offensive Russian forces. In Mykolaiv, Kherson region, in Zaporizhia, we contain the enemy that tries to renew the offensive. Within Kiev and Kiev region, the defense continues increasing the fortification engineering and visual reconnaissance means. We conduct defensive, but in some spots we continue offensives and attack the enemy. Within a week, in Kursk direction, we freed and got full control on Potemkina. In Kuravka direction, Pavlivka. Our detachments of artillery and rocket military took the command and struck the storages for ammunition and storages for fuel and command forces. And the enemy has a lot of losses. I want to point your attention on one aspect. Information is one more front line for resisting the aggressor. To start a full-scale aggression of Russian Federation against us, the propagandists of occupant several times changed their rhetorics regarding the war in Ukraine. Transformation of their narratives is the evidence that none of the plans of Kremlin on capturing Ukraine currently was implemented. The striking situation in the end of February actually spread on threatening and disorienting the population of Ukraine with the messages that that Ukraine will surrender to the full. They said, the Russians said. In March, they said that it's impossible to capture 40 million country fast, but Russian management said that Russian Federation has no losses. In April, propagandists of Russian Federation said that we're convinced that it all goes according to plan. But depending on how the Blitzkrieg was failing and their callings were on fire, they changed the rhetoric to whitewashing the prolonged so-called military operation. They were speaking about destroying the military potential of Ukraine. So, in May, after they abandoned the territory of Kiev, Chernihiv, and Sumy region, they said that on those directions, the goals were almost achieved, and that's a planned maneuver. In particular, special operation goes according to plan. And now, the second stage, the goal was to get full control of the Donetsk and Lugansk regions. It's June. They failed of so-called freeing Donbass, and they pushed propagandists of Kremlin to change the rhetorics. They announced the third stage of special operation to pushing Ukrainian forces from Lugansk and Donetsk regions. At the same time, propagandists start preparing population of Russian Federation to probable military failures. Naturally, nobody speaks about failure openly, but start getting some notification about hard status and even mistakes of military management of aggressor. Summarizing, I want to emphasize that regardless of powerful efforts of the enemy to negatively and informationally impact on Ukraine and its defenders, the Russian propaganda loses efficiency. The only thing that it's capable of is disseminating disinfo and fakes that in their turn are oriented to their internal Russian audience. The population of temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine resists with all possible means to Russian occupants. The answer to this is that they change time for referendum of announcing so-called People's Republics. The military service personnel of Ukraine is not subject to propaganda as well. We will win, and propagandists of Russia will be punished. Thank you. Glory to Ukraine. Next speaker, Major General Oleksiy Nadtochy, Head of Operative Administration of National Guard of Ukraine. What was happening in National Guard over the week? Good day, dear ladies and gentlemen. I'll briefly speak about National Guard. Its role works with armed forces and security and defense sector and participates in rebuffing the aggression. There were no changes in the tasks of National Guard. The military parts of National Guard within framework of groups of armed forces participate in conducting defensive operation in Slobozhansky, Donetsk, Southern Bug operation regions. In deterring the offensive of the enemy in Kharkiv, Lysychansk, Luhansk regions, in defending cities Kryvyi Rih, Mykolaiv, Zaporizhia, where the main effort was focused on preventing advancements of enemy in directions of Bryslav, Kryvyi Rih, Gulaipole, Zaporizhia, and holding the defined regions along the sea line and securing the objects of critical structure. In southern western operation region zone, it's Volynski, Polysky, and Siversky operation region, together with the State Border Guard and Armed Forces of Ukraine, National Guards covering the state border with the Republic of Belarus. And also, on top of task of active combat, National Guard conducts service for security within the country, conducts stabilization operations, fulfills tasks of territorial defense, and the main efforts are focused at defense security of important state objects, defense security of bodies of state authorities and consulates and embassies, objects of critical infrastructure, anti-saboteur and paratrooper actions, and cooperation with other law enforcement bodies. Also, during the week, with the help of land operation, the Aviation National Guard for fire attack of enemy conducted 5 helicopter flights, aeromedic evacuation and transporting 20 helicopter flights, and detachments of recon of detected 301 target of enemy, 103 out of them were the posts, and UAVs 178, radio electronic recon 20. Engineer EOD detachments of National Guard conduct operation of demining of freed settlements of Kiev region. The start of war operation cleared 141 hectare of territory and detected and destroyed over 14,000 of explosives. Diver groups continues demining of water beds in Kiev region. In the week, they tested 5.5 kilometers of Dnipro River. To normalize situation border of Volynsk region, countering crime and public security and order, and working on persons that could be accomplices to terrorist and saboteur activity and cooperation with aggressor country. Detachments of National Guard, together with National Police, conducted prophylactic means. During that, they listed over 70 settlements, detained for administrative violation 140, and for criminal 17 people, seized 1 grenade throwers, 7 units of firearms, over 1,000 ammo, 13 grenades, and also trotil explosives, anti-tank mines, tactical knives, military radios, etc. Results of installation restriction means the National Guard service personnel independently and with National Police and with the Forces of Territorial Defense 24/7 conduct tasks on roadblocks to timely react on changes operative situation, control of transport movements of civilians, and also entrance and exits to settlements. They put additionally 15 more roadblocks, more posts. Thus, National Guards conducts tasks on 191 block posts and 16 regions of Ukraine, fulfill special tasks on those roadblocks. Since the full-scale invasion and of Russian Federation armed forces and conducting administrative and criminal violations, we detained 3,193 persons. Over this week, on roadblocks, we seized 13 units of firearms, of over 2.2 thousands of ammo, cold weapon 10 units, and 16 grenades. Few examples of service on roadblocks. Service tasks after stopping and checking the vehicles. On one of the roadblocks in the capital, the driver was evidently nervous and word fight with the Guardians. When the vehicle was searched, they found F1 grenade infused to it. The person was detained. During the curfew in the roadblock in Kryvyi Rih, K9 with a dog found 227 ammo of different caliber in a vehicle of a civilian. Outside of combat area, National Guard conducts service in enforced regime to ensure safety of population, in particular during curfew. Our service personnel thoroughly check means of transport of civilians and other persons that violate regime of curfew to prevent activity of saboteurs of enemy, possible offense, and creating threats to health and life of civilians. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. I want to invite our speakers for Q&A session. Please, cheers, colleagues, raise your hands and speak to the microphones.
Ukrinform, Vitaly Golod.
Ukrinform, Vitaly Golod. Question to Oleksandr Motuzyanyk and Oleksiy. Hromov. Question is, you said about exchange of prisoner of war. 144 are defenders. It was the Zaporizhia region. Could you characterize, was it mainly those who were fighting in the southern part of our front line? Or from them, was it mostly Donetsk People Republic, so-called, of combatants, or who were they? I understand your question. Let's understand. Information was announced in the amount that we can speak about. There are structures that are involved with exchange, in depth. However, it's a very, very sensitive topic. Please understand. Security service, administration of the intelligence, it's their task. They do it. Whom we exchange, we cannot discover about our exchange fund because it can damage the process of freeing our people. So please let's be patient and wait for official announcements, and take them as they are. Question to Oleksiy Hromov regarding the front line in the Kharkiv direction and in Belarusian border. For some time, there was quiet, so to speak. Right now, they activized an activity on the Kharkiv direction of the occupants. What is it related to? Is it opening the second direction to the half front or front? And what is the probability of attack from Belarus? How probable that is? And regarding Lysychansk and Bakhmut direction, the enemy we know uses the tactics of scorched earth and destroys everything, not leaving. So we have nothing to leave for. So metaphorically speaking. So what can we counter to that tactic of scorched earth? We're on a situation in Kharkiv direction. As we said, is it possibly a second opening, second front? The enemy, we don't exclude such possibility. We watch the enemy, their activities. They fire at certain settlements, at certain regions. We understand that thus they try to test our defense and find weak spots and possible directions of action of their military. And they tried so-called preparation of their artillery detachments in combat. And they rotate detachment, and as it was in 2014, they so-called they train on us, so to speak. However, opening second front on the Kharkiv direction, right now we do not observe, we do not predict that. Next question regarding Belarus. In Belarus also, as a main information of intelligence and other structures that are concerned in these issues and collect information and track the situation. And each briefing, we just share the information that we have, and currently that we can announce that there are no signs of creating offensive groups in Belarus. Yes, they're conducted, certain means are conducted from armed forces of Belarus and from what I understand that disguised as Belarusian forces, there are some troops of Russian Federation, but I want to announce there are no signs of creating offensive groups from Belarusian direction. Regarding scorched earth tactic, yes, there is no secret that the enemy has upper hand in the artillery system and ammo for artillery systems. And if in the start of military aggression they wanted to make a blitzkrieg and make a parade, and we stopped them, and they didn't manage the blitzkrieg, so they actively use artillery. However, once again, as we emphasized, information that you have is we share the information that we can share. For example, we told you information regarding the use of our artillery systems, of our aviation and rocket troops, regarding returning control over Snake Island. Now also there are means also of artillery and rocket and aviation, and there's no secret, with the help of weapons that we receive from our partners, we can now counter-battery combat and attacks on storages and administration centers. Our strikes are not that large scales. We don't use that as much ammo as the enemy, but they have higher precision than the enemy strikes. As was emphasized several times, with less quantity of ammo, we try to get the maximum effect. And that process started, and that process is ongoing. More questions?
One. Okay.
First question about Snake Island. About the Snake Island. Okay, Russian left the island. Are you ready to rejoin the control of the island and to keep it, or you will leave it without defensor? And the possession of the freedom rejoined by the highland will help you to move your ships with wheat to the rest of the world?
Дякую.
Thank you. Regarding question on Snake Island. Yes, the enemy left Snake Island. Within a few days, we forced the enemy to leave the island. Currently, we don't have any R troopers on Snake Island, but there will be. There will be R troopers on Zmini. Currently, the weather conditions are difficult on Snake Island, near Snake Island, and we cannot evaluate high quality R attack, but quantitative. So we don't see the full picture. But with help of other recon means, we are confirmed by our intelligence that strikes were successful on Snake Island. The military equipment and occupants that were there were destroyed. So the strikes were quite efficient, and that forced Russians to leave Snake Island. And the plans of armed forces, yes, of course we have plans to get full control, direct physical control over Snake Island. Currently, we control it with the help of our weapons, of long-range artillery, rockets, missiles, and aviation. Regarding ships with grain, armed forces will do everything possible for stabilizing the situation, to have an opportunity for the structures to conduct safely, to move ships via our territorial waters. Друге питання про ситуацію в Лисичанську.
Are you ready to retreat your men, to save them if the situation will be worst, or you will keep the Lysychansk at every cost?
Прошу перевести.
Ситуація у Лисичанську. Чи готові ми до того, що війська наші відступять, чи вони будуть займати позиції далі?
Це питання.
The question is also not you, that other journalists asked that regarding Severodonetsk. Look, our detachments are prepared to any development of affairs. Right now, the plans for detachments that defend Lysychansk, there's no plan to retreat. They're defending the settlement. In the morning, the enemy started the assault from different directions, but there is combat ongoing, and the enemy has no success as we speak. The question regarding scorched earth tactics. We understand that the enemy will try to continue the war crimes on destroying our settlements, on destroying infrastructure. We're prepared to situation develop like this, but we conduct defensive actions. Our artillery and aviation, as yesterday, and I hope today, will actively be used on the enemy. And the results on those tasks, the results on fire strikes will be shared with you. Thank you.
Chief of our intelligence, the chief of your intelligence, 2 days ago, announced that Ukraine is ready to a big operation, something very important in the next weeks, which means that you are ready for a push, a counter push, in order to push the Russian away from Ukraine, or can you confirm that you are preparing a new counter-offensive?
In order to conduct counteroffensive, first we need to stabilize the situation. That's step one. Currently, we're do everything possible to stabilize the situation. And we're managing that for the time being, currently. Regarding counteroffensive, In any country of the world, in any armed forces, there are detachments that conduct tasks on the contact line, and they are reserves. And there is a saying, commander without reserves is an adventurer, yes? Of course, we're preparing the detachments to active combat. Active combat, they provide active defense, not only positional defense when we fulfill tasks just on this line. We don't move left, right, no further, just stand ground. Active defense provides leaving certain positions, leaving certain territories, and further active actions of renewing the control. And active actions also provide counter-offensive measures. I emphasize that thanks to our active offensive, we freed 2 settlements from the occupants. Regarding freeing other settlements, we will share information when we'll have it. We have the potential, we're preparing. We're preparing to any development of affairs for defense and for active counteroffensive as well. Thank you. Last question, please. Mr. Hromov, does we have temporarily occupied Severodonetsk? Does it mean that the Russians will focus their attention on the Slavyansky Kramatorsk? Does it mean that? Look, we have this military machine of aggressor. Its target is to, as Putin is and his personnel, they try to capture all Ukraine, so we lose our sovereignty. That's their goal. As a military person, I understand, as the military management of Ukraine, that the enemy will continue trying to get full control over Lysychansk, Slavyansk, and other settlements of Ukraine. Their first task is getting full control of territories of Lugansk and Donetsk regions. Yes, we don't exclude that. We're being realistic and look at the situation. We realistically see what the goals are. We have intelligence data regarding the actions. We have the plans, and of course, we're working. And the last question, sort of is a military TV question to General Hromov. If you allow me, I would like to return to Belarus. Recent days, there is spread of that Russians are activizing their actions, missile strikes from territory of Belarus, to trying to provoke and to involve Belarus into direct combat with Ukraine. Can you confirm activization of Russians, in particular missile strikes from Belarusian territory? Yes, of course. Yes, it was from Belarusian territory. And in media, that was openly stated. Yes, there's no secret. Of course, missile strikes were conducted from territory of Belarus. Nizhny settlement, aviation of enemy strikes from Belarusian territory, also from Belarusian territory. Not exceptionally from that territory, but also from territory of Russian Federation, from Equatorias of Black Sea, and from Belarusian territory, naturally. I thank you all. Thank you for being with us. General Hromov with us. Oleksandr Motuzyanyk was with us. Oleksiy Nadtochy. Thank you all, and I hope that next week we'll hear more good news. Thank you.